talk about these challenges in regards of technicality first, and then some administrative approach that come from the development of this solution within the SeCoIIA project. But first, I would really like to show you what the collaborative SOC for us is. So from the project proposal, what we have is first the why. Why do we need a collaborative SOC? Why would we like to have such an environment? Well, you see there, we have enlisted some reasons. The first one being because you want to detect and react in collaboration, meaning you don't want to do it alone simply because you can do these activities with the support of your fellow colleagues, let's say from the whole supply chain or from the whole industry or even industry, cross-industry people that is helping you to react to any incident here. Then you would like to reduce the decision time and response costs. Yeah, of course. So whenever you collaborate, your aim is to provide a more diligent response with a timely manner, so you can react better, and most likely the incident won't take too much time to be mitigated, let's say. So the idea is that whenever you have an army of attackers coming to your network or to your assets, then you would also have an army of responders and people to protect you from them. So that's why you would like to escalate, let's say, your ability to detect and respond. Then improve coordination of safety and security teams. Of course, that is valid not only for your internal teams, but also cross value chain, let's say, cross supply chain. That way you can protect not only the digital assets, but also the people working with those digital assets and their safety. So whenever you are handling robots in this factory shop, you have the risk of safety also there, and therefore you want to protect the people that is actually responsible for creating and producing whatever you offer. Then we have information sharing and coordinated incidents and threat management, meaning exactly what I asked you before. What are you going to share? Who are you going to share it with? Why are you going to do that? There should be some kind of regulation, or rather a standard among the whole environment with which you are going to share the information. And therefore, it would be better to have it all set up beforehand in order to handle this incident and threat in a more likely manner that can help you really respond to any incident. And finally, explore the best decisions anytime and anywhere. Yeah, that's the idea. So you don't have to be actually on your local SOC to respond whenever anything happens, maybe because you don't have the ability to do that, you don't have the resources or enough resources to do that. And then you rely on this collaborative environment to support you with that. Or if you are outside the SOC and let's say on another facility, and you have to react to this, then you can actually go to the collaborative layer and start working with your peers throughout that solution. And who is this collaborative SOC approach focused on? Well, we are working in the SeCoIIA project with multidisciplinary teams, of course, that's a first. So we are not looking only to analysts, we are not looking only to cybersecurity professionals. Yeah, they are the main part, but we are also looking for this safety layer. So we are talking to people in the operation layer of the value chain. We are talking to IT. We are talking to also the edge technology and so on. So people that are responsible for all these kind of technologies on the Purdue model, let's say, and therefore it's important that all of them understand how the collaboration will take place and who is responsible of what. Then distributed environments, of course, if we are talking about what's down there, the complete value and supply chain. We're talking about companies that are not set on a geographically specific location, but rather throughout the whole continent, throughout one country, and so on. So you can see that the places in which you will have a facility are not in one single location, and therefore this is something that should be taken into account, and that is where collaboration comes in place, because we want to give you a tool that enables you to respond and detect and respond to any incident in a better way. And then cross-industry stakeholders. Part of the SeCoIIA project is working in use cases from maritime, aerospace, and automotive industries. And therefore, what we are looking for is to create an environment in which all these industries get enriched by the information they are sharing on this collaborative layer, and therefore understand how an incident that is, let's say, focused on aerospace could affect automotive, or could transform itself to affect maritime industries. And therefore, that's what we're looking forward to build. So that's the collaborative SOC. But then there are some concerns that rises whenever you start talking about collaboration. A part of the technology that is going to be used and the architecture that should be there, there are some main challenges regarding the information sharing and threat intelligence. So you all know that for this intelligence, there are several services out there that we get use of, but a part of those international well-known sources, now you will be sharing intelligence with people that, not with people, with organizations that more likely are either part of your supply chain or even in another industry that could be potentially also working with one of your how's it called, the other, so organizations that work not with you in the same industry. But then you want to know that you can trust all this environment. You want to know that everything that is happening there stays in there. So, you know, it's an environment that you would like to see as Las Vegas. So everything that happens there stays there, and no one could ever enter to that information, and no one could ever know what is happening inside. But that is only true if you start trusting everyone in the environment, and therefore the rules that are set in order to perform this collaboration should be real clear, stated into one single document or one single service level agreement, let's say, that is valid for all the parties within this collaborative environment. Then the national and international legal requirements are also a concern, especially because of this distributed nature of the collaborative environment. And then you start thinking about how are we going to handle digital evidence, who is going to be accountable for it, and how are we going to handle incidents transnationally. So that's also a valid concern, and in regards of the legality of all this work. And therefore, the rules should be set also, again, in these service level agreements, in the contracts that you are making with each organization, and the accountability that is going to be happening within that environment too. Then you have the data privacy and sensitivity policy. That's also something that raised some concerns on the first part of the presentation on these questions. So who are you sharing the information with, and what kind of information that affects people are you sharing? This data privacy regulation that we have in Europe is transnational, fortunately, but yeah, of course, there are some flavors, let's say, within the nations that should be taken into account. and that should be clear whenever this collaboration starts. Then we have the availability of the value chain and service level agreements. Of course, the availability, meaning what happens when this collaboration layer is set up within my company. So would that have any effect on the way we operate the process, on the way we are doing things inside my own network? What happens if you provide me with a strategy for eliminating a threat, and then by implementing that strategy, I just stop my operation, mainly because whatever you gave me didn't took into account the technology I'm using. So that's also a concern that rises whenever the collaboration starts. And therefore, there are also some technological challenges, let's say. So first, data gathering, sanitization, and aggregation. How are we going to get this data? For what are the connection channels? What are the devices that can be integrated into this solution? How are we going to do that? Do we speak all the protocols that are inside your architecture, and so on? So we need to understand exactly what is the technological environment within each of the networks and each of the partners that are part of this collaborative environment, in order to create and build up a good architecture to protect and to provide this collaboration layer, and so it can be useful. Otherwise, it is just a fancy name that would not be used at this maximum extent because of technological constraints. A secure connection, of course, to send that information from A to B, and not only from A to B, but from the central collaborative SOC to the other parties within this collaborative environment. So communication channels and protocols should be also cleared out. Another challenge that we have from the technical perspective is ontology and taxonomy that will help us interpret and maintain one single language, let's say, whenever responding to incidents, and therefore being standard and harmonized in the way that we interact with each party of the collaborative environment, meaning not only while sending messages, but also when getting information and when interpreting it. Next, we have this flexibility and scalability challenge. So you will come and say, yeah, I am part of this collaborative environment with one location. I want to add another one and another one. And you know what? I have a new supplier for this. I want them to be also part of this collaborative environment. How are we going to deal with that? And most likely they don't have a standardized set of technology and maybe, yeah, and a standardized protocol for communication. But that's also something that we need to, let's say, guarantee as part of the solution for the collaboration to work. Otherwise, it would take longer to implement such an environment rather than providing a timely and quick response to the customer needs. Then we have this introduction of new relationships, meaning either within the network or within your own company, you have new technology adding value to the value chain, and therefore you want to also make it part of the collaborative environment, which come into this scalability problem. But then you have to take into account that these new relationships present new risks, and therefore that's also something that should be studied beforehand. Then you have different levels of maturity among companies and also within your own company. Most likely, within your own company, different networks have different levels of maturity of cybersecurity implemented within them, and therefore that is a factor that should be also studied and analyzed before onboarding that set of network into the collaborative environment to provide a better response to the incidents that could be there. But as there are concerns and challenges, there are also incentives for being part of collaboration. And this is, let's say, my personal view of incentives is not based on a legal perspective, let's say, or on a more accurate study, broad study, but rather on experience. And as for the administrative part, I put exemption of liability as one of the incentives. Yeah, I heard before the talks that we're talking about this exemption of liability while sharing information and not being, let's say, actual or real on some countries. So there's a lack of comprehension and practical implementation of this idea. But I think that in the times to come, this exemption of liability should be there and should be clear enough so that you are encouraged to be part of such environments in which whenever you know that there's an incident going on, or you even have a thread in there that could potentially become an incident, and you start sharing that information in this environment, then you are already stating, hey, I have this window open. First, I would really like you to help me close it. And second, all of you know that it is open, and therefore you can take your own mitigation measures so that my window does not affect, my window being open does not affect your operation. And therefore, there could be an exception of liability whenever an incident happens. And that's also, for me, part of due diligence, communicating something that could happen in the future is actually being responsible. Whenever you have an incident going on, you are accountable for your communication, and therefore you need to tell the people affected by this incident that there is something ongoing. So why not also telling organizations that you have threads open? I think that's something that should be there and should be encouraged. Reduce shared information expenses. I've seen that from Econscient, for example, they are proposing this reduce on expenses, mainly because all of the organizations within this collaborative environment would be essentially paying, let's say, for this investigation, and not only one organization. Therefore, of course, the cost of this investigation will reduce for one. Yeah, for other ones, we say we don't have to pay for anything because the incident didn't happen in other networks. But then again, the incident could affect your networks, and therefore you are paying for preventive actions. And I think that is also some incentive could be encouraged for the collaboration network. Optimize attack and response costs, of course, because now you are getting information from several sources, not only from international ones, but rather more down to earth, down to the industry that you are working with, down to the organizations that actually are part of your value chain, and therefore I think that information is more valuable to you and to the way that you're going to respond, and therefore you should have a better set of mitigation measures to respond to these incidents, and of course that would potentially reduce the costs of implementing them. And then reduce insurance primes. I added that because now that the cybersecurity insurance are, let's say, growing. One good measure to reduce the primes that you will pay while an incident is being detected should be related to due diligence, and part of due diligence is this having a set of collaborative, a set of organizations that work with you in this collaborative environment, helping you first mitigate your risks, then respond in a timely manner, in a more accurate way to your incidents and so on. And therefore, you are doing more than acting just alone. And that should potentially reduce these insurance primes. Then there are some technical incentives. First of all, interoperability. You will most likely end up with all your organizations within your value chain, and therefore everything that is going on throughout that network, let's say, could be easily integrated into the collaboration environment, because you already did the homework while standardizing the technology for integration of your systems with your suppliers, and therefore it would be easier to onboard them into such a collaborative environment. Standardization not only in the technology part, but also in the response part. We also already talked about ontology, for example, solutions within the SOC that you are working with. All of that is going to be standardized, and therefore it will potentially help you to create better analysis and to provide a better response. So whenever resources are lacking in one organization, you can count on this collaborative environment to get resources from other organizations and also from the collaboration layer. Optimize attack and response strategies. Yeah, because you are getting experience in an exponential way. You're not basing your experience only based on what happened to you, what incidents you have gone through, or what the SOC knows from someone, some other organization which you cannot talk to, and of course you cannot get that information from. And therefore, having a collaboration environment will help you grow better. On this way, you could talk not only to the collaboration layer, but also to your peers within the environment. And finally, coordination and orchestration gets easier, because there's one, let's say, single point in which the collaboration happens, and they know with the KPIs what is going on and how to better respond and who to contact and how to do it. So essentially, they are becoming like a CERT of CERTs or a SOC of SOCs, let's say, that are managing the whole incident from the beginning to end, and you won't be alone on that part. And all this comes.
To say that we are almost out of time, so I guess you're wrapping up.
I'm finishing with this. Yeah. So we're seeing this into the context of Industry 4.0. Yeah, there are more challenges compared to just doing this on the IT environment, mainly because there's a broader scope of protection. You have more devices, more protocols, and even some proprietary ones that are difficult to include into such a solution. Of course, you have now conversions of IT and OT in one single environment, and that makes the scope and the risks analysis bigger, and therefore the response strategy is also more complex. The legacy technology is there, so you will find equipment that has been there for 20 years and so on, and therefore integrated into the SOC is going to be a bit more hard, let's say. Higher degree of availability needed, of course. You cannot interrupt anytime the operational process, and then any unmitigated risk could affect the safety within the shop floor. And with that, sorry I took more than expected, but I would like to thank you. And if you have any questions, now it's time for that.